Hello, welcome to the Bella, Infidelity Stories channel, where we present authentic tales filled with surprising turns. If you appreciate the video, please consider subscribing and giving it a thumbs up. It truly supports the growth of our channel. Now, let's immerse ourselves in the narrative. This caught me off guard. I arrived at Tom's place, as I often do, to chat about various topics, discuss weekend plans, and perhaps enjoy a few beers together. I rapped on the door, yet silence greeted me in return that I thought perhaps he was unavailable, so I took out my phone to review some messages. Just as I was about to unlock the screen, the door let out a haunting creak and swung open. It was not Tom who welcomed me. It was his mother, Katie. Her expression was one of surprise upon seeing me there, but it lacked the typical, casual, "Hey, what's up?" greeting. She appeared transformed. Perhaps it was the manner in which she stood, slightly leaning against the doorframe, as though she hadn't anticipated anyone's arrival, particularly mine. "Is it James?" She spoke with a gentle smile. Her voice carried a hint of weariness, suggesting she had endured a lengthy day. "Tom is not at home, however. Care to step inside? I'm on the verge of brewing a delightful cup of tea." I took a moment to reflect. Something in her tone stirred a feeling within me, compelling me to consider her request rather than dismiss it. "Absolutely, let's go for it." I entered with a casual shrug. Katie guided me into the living room, and it struck me that I had never truly spent time alone with her before. Tom and I had shared a friendship for years, yet our encounters were often fleeting. She was perpetually occupied, constantly engaged in some activity. This time, however, it was solely the two of us. "Apologies, I wasn't sure if you were pressed for time," she remarked while placing the kettle on the stove. "You're not, are you? It feels like forever since we last connected." I tilted my head in disbelief. "No worries, I've got plenty of time." The living room exuded a warm and inviting atmosphere. Comfortable and known, yet today an unusual stillness lingered, as if it had been ages since anyone truly occupied this space and engaged in conversation. Katie settled onto the couch and gestured for me to join her by her side. It lacked the typical laid-back, friendly invitation to sit down that one might expect from a friend's mother. It seemed to carry a greater sense of purpose. "What's been happening in your world? How is everything unfolding?" I inhaled deeply, uncertain why it felt so peculiar to converse with her in this manner. Perhaps it was due to her being this remote, commanding presence in my thoughts, yet now, she appeared to be merely someone seeking a connection. Her inquiries went beyond mere pleasantries. She genuinely wanted to know about my life, about the things I usually kept to myself. "It's nice," I mentioned. "Let's aim for a lighter touch. I just caught up with work. You understand how it goes." She gave a slight nod. Then a change flickered across her expression, as if her mind had wandered to another thought. Engaged in her tasks, she murmured, her tone gentle. "I understand, but, James, remember to prioritize your well-being. Though you may be in your youth, navigating life can be quite complex, wouldn't you agree?" I found myself at a loss for words, so I simply nodded in response. It seemed she made a valid observation. We continued our conversation, meandering through topics that held no significance. Her work, the weather, Tom's latest antics, it all flowed naturally. I found myself truly enjoying the moment. A surprising moment of tranquility unfolded before me. As the dialogue continued, it dawned on me that Katie was more than merely Tom's mother. She was an individual in her own essence. A person who existed beyond the confines of her son, beyond all else. As we engaged in conversation, a new perspective emerged, prompting me to reflect on her reality and the challenges she faces. She rarely shared details about her personal life, yet occasionally, her words hinted at deeper feelings, revealing a sense of isolation and the experience of being unnoticed. The kettle let out a sharp whistle, shattering the stillness that enveloped us. She rose to her feet, and I observed her glide through the kitchen, a fluid, seemingly effortless dance. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though I was catching a glimpse of a part of her that was meant to remain hidden. It struck me just how swiftly the hours had flown by. It was never meant to be significant, yet there was an undeniable quality to being here with her that felt unique. Katie returned with 2 steaming cups of tea and settled back down beside me. We sat in silence for a moment, savoring our beverages. She gazed at me once more, this time with a depth of comprehension that eluded my grasp. "You know," she said slowly, "Tom, he doesn't always perceive things as I do. I'm really pleased you stopped by today, James. It's refreshing to engage with someone who truly pays attention." Words escaped me in that moment. A peculiar blend of guilt washed over me, accompanied by an indescribable sensation. Just as I began to untangle my thoughts, the front door swung open. Tom had returned home. I rose abruptly, placing my cup aside. Katie rose as well, and our eyes met in a silent exchange. It was subtle, yet in that fleeting instant, a change had occurred between us. Something left unsaid. "Hey there," Tom said as he entered. "What's going on?" "Mom, you've been having a conversation with James all this time." Katie beamed and acknowledged, her tone airy once more, simply reconnecting. "It has been pleasant." I bid my farewells in haste, my thoughts still whirling. A shift had occurred in that conversation. Something nuanced, yet unmistakable. It wasn't as if I had committed any wrongdoing, yet an unusual heaviness lingered in the atmosphere as I departed. The sensation lingered within me, a certainty that this wouldn't be the final exchange between Katie and myself. I found myself uncertain whether that was a positive development or a negative one. Regardless, there was an unmistakable sense that a shift was imminent. The following day, the strange sensation from my trip to Tom's house lingered in my mind. The conversation echoed in my mind, playing over and over. Something in Katie's tone lingered in my mind. There was an essence in the still moments that lingered in my mind. It was an indescribable feeling, yet I found it impossible to overlook. I thought perhaps I was complicating matters, so I carried on with my day, as I typically do. The demands of work kept me engaged and occupied. Upon arriving home and glancing at my phone, I discovered a message from Katie. "Hello, James, I trust you are doing well. If you have some time tomorrow, perhaps we could meet for a coffee. I would be delighted to keep our conversation going. Take your time, just inform me if you find it appealing." Initially, I felt inclined to dismiss it. It appeared to be nothing out of the ordinary, merely a kind act. Yet there was an unmistakable quality to it, a sense of intimacy that transcended the usual small talk about the weather that I typically share with others. Tom and I had always been friends, yet I never considered his mom someone I would engage with beyond the typical casual conversation. I gazed at the message for a moment. I could convince myself that it was merely an invitation to share a cup of coffee, nothing beyond that. Yet, a part of me lingered in uncertainty. I had a sense that she was genuinely kind. She showed me kindness even in Tom's absence, yet an undeniable tension was brewing between us that I couldn't overlook. Yet, I reassured myself that I was simply being theatrical. I swiftly crafted a reply. "Absolutely, that sounds great. Tomorrow is good for me." The message was dispatched before I had the chance to reconsider my decision. It was just that straightforward. Yet, deep down, I sensed that this encounter would transcend the ordinary coffee meetup. The following afternoon, I rendezvoused with Katie at a quaint cafe close to her residence. The atmosphere was serene, a setting where the gentle murmur of dialogue mingled with the delicate sound of cups clinking together. She was already seated at a quaint table by the window when I arrived, exuding an air of tranquility and poise. Her face lit up with a smile upon seeing me. For a brief moment, the tension that had been simmering between us slipped from my mind. "Hello, James." With a warm smile, she gestured for me to take a seat opposite her. "I'm pleased you were able to join us." "Sure thing," I replied as I took a seat. I inhaled deeply, seeking to find my composure. This was merely coffee, wasn't it? Yet, during our conversation, I found myself captivated by the intensity of her gaze upon me. The look was far from the familiar, warm gaze I had come to expect. It was an exploration of profound ideas, a reflection that invited contemplation. Her gaze held mine for an unusually long moment, and there was a gentle quality to her voice that stirred an inexplicable discomfort within me. We discussed the typical topics, our jobs, and life overall. Yet, there was an unspoken tension in the conversation that seemed distinct. It was more than a simple reunion between two individuals. It seemed as though she was reaching out to me in a way that was difficult to define. "Tom has been so wrapped up in his own affairs lately," she remarked, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee. "At times, I find myself longing for a genuine exchange of thoughts. It seems as though he is perpetually occupied, leaving little room for genuine conversation." I nodded, striving to maintain my attention on the dialogue, yet the heaviness of her words continued to bear down on me. It was evident that her frustration ran deeper than just her issues with Tom. I discovered a desire to lean in closer, to be the one who truly engaged, despite the awareness that it wasn't my role to do so. Katie's voice dipped a notch, as though she were confiding a secret. "Sometimes, it feels as though I'm caught in an endless cycle, you know. It seems as though everything appears to be in order, yet deep down, I sense that I'm not truly experiencing life." I found myself at a loss for words in that moment. Her words carried a weight of sorrow that demanded attention, even though she sought no counsel. The sadness enveloped you, stirring a deep urge to act, even if the path forward remained unclear. Yet, I remained silent, uncertain if it was appropriate for me to speak up. "Have you ever experienced that sensation?" she inquired, her gaze fixed intently on me. "As if you're merely following a routine?" I took a moment to reflect on it. Indeed, I found myself saying finally, unaware of why I was confessing it to her. "I suppose I do. It's simple to find oneself caught in a routine, isn't it? As you navigate through the hours, you find yourself merely surviving the day, and suddenly, time has slipped away, leaving you to ponder its elusive passage." She nodded, her eyes warming with understanding. "Precisely. At times, that's the sentiment that washes over me. It feels as though I'm unseen by everyone else, but when I engage with you, James, everything changes. You truly pay attention." Her words struck me with an intensity one hadn't anticipated. The gravity of her words caught me off guard, leaving me at a loss for how to reply. Before I could fully grasp the situation, Katie rose suddenly, her gaze unfocused. Apologies escaped her lips, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I never intended for this to feel uncomfortable. Let's simply disregard my previous words." Yet, it felt completely natural. Not quite. It was clear she was navigating the complexities of her feelings, and I found myself right in the thick of it. It was a challenging situation, yet it was one I couldn't simply turn my back on. "It's all right," I said, attempting to comfort her. "It brings me joy to know that you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts with me." For a moment, I sensed the familiar tension between us once more, yet this time it felt lighter. It felt like a bond, unexpected yet undeniably genuine, weaving between us in a way we couldn't ignore. As we sipped our coffee, an undeniable sense lingered that this was merely the start of something greater. A change had occurred, and despite my attempts to convince myself it was insignificant, I understood deep within that it was anything but. Katie smiled once more before we departed, but this time it carried a deeper meaning beyond mere friendliness. It was something deeper, something intricate, and I found myself pondering the direction in which this was all heading. The days after that coffee with Katie were oddly unsettling. I repeatedly reassured myself that it was insignificant, merely a dialogue between two individuals seeking to understand their existence. Yet, as I pondered further, it became increasingly clear that there was a deeper layer at play. I had visited Tom's place numerous times in the past, yet that particular moment carried a unique significance. Katie's words, her gaze, the way she appeared to reveal herself to me in an unforeseen manner, it all lingered heavily on my mind. I attempted to dismiss it, yet I caught myself pondering her more often than I ought to have. The conversation wasn't the only thing that stayed with me. It was the way I had been welcomed into her realm, creating a sense of closeness and connection. It was unfamiliar to witness her in this light, as someone grappling with her own challenges and emotions. She had been Tom's mom, a presence lingering in the shadows, and now she had transformed into something greater. For the next few days, I found myself steering clear of Tom's place. I realized I required some distance, a moment to allow the circumstances to calm down before I inadvertently made things more complicated. However, it didn't take long for Tom to reach out to me. "Hello there, how are you doing?" he inquired, a hint of worry in his tone. "You've seemed a bit removed recently." For a brief moment, I paused before responding. "Yes, I'm doing well. Just occupied with tasks, you understand how it goes." "Absolutely, I understand that," Tom remarked, though I could sense the doubt in his voice. "But truly, if there's anything bothering you, I'm here to listen. Your behavior has been unusual ever since that day at my place." I found myself at a loss for words. I couldn't quite reveal to him that his mom and I had enjoyed a coffee together, discussing life in ways I had never anticipated. I found it difficult to articulate why that conversation felt so intimate, as if she had shared a secret with me. In a peculiar manner, I found myself having done the same. The situation was intricate. "I'm not sure, just a lot swirling around in my thoughts," I mentioned while staying ambiguous. "Looking forward to our conversation soon." Tom appeared to come to terms with that and concluded the discussion, yet I was still haunted by the sense that I hadn't completely confronted the events that transpired. A few days later, I found myself once more outside Tom's house. This time, I acted without a moment's pause. I found myself uncertain about my expectations, yet I realized that I could no longer evade them. As I pressed the doorbell, a peculiar blend of excitement and unease washed over me. Tom swung the door open, his expression revealing a hint of surprise. "Hey," I said, attempting to maintain a sense of normalcy. "I thought I'd swing by." "Absolutely, my friend. Come on in," Tom said, stepping aside to welcome me inside. Upon entering the house, my gaze was instantly drawn to Katie in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she busily stirred something on the stove. For a brief instant, I considered retreating and walking away, yet I chose not to. I understood that confronting this was inevitable. "Hey, James," Katie remarked, casting a quick look behind her, "I wasn't aware you were stopping by." "Sure, just pause and chill for a moment," I suggested, my tone slightly too relaxed. Tom reached into the fridge and pulled out a beer, then passed one to me. "Are you interested in catching the game?" I nodded, yet my gaze continually wandered back to Katie. She immersed herself in the cooking, yet an odd separation lingered between us at that moment. The atmosphere had shifted, it was no longer the relaxed vibe we once enjoyed. A shift had occurred, leaving both of us uncertain about how to navigate it. As Tom and I made ourselves comfortable in the living room, an uncomfortable tension lingered in the atmosphere. We discussed the game, yet my thoughts continually drifted back to Katie. She appeared changed, more aloof, as if she were deliberately steering clear of making eye contact with me. I understood that a conversation with her was inevitable, yet I found myself at a loss for words. How can I convey that everything has changed between us? Eventually, Tom stood up to fetch something from upstairs, leaving me in solitude with Katie. The silence hung heavily in the air, and I realized this was the moment I needed to break it. Katie faced me, her expression a mystery. "James, we must have a conversation." My heart raced with excitement. The dreaded words had finally arrived. I gazed at her for a moment, uncertain of how to reply. A part of me wished to dismiss it, to act as if nothing had transpired, yet I found myself unable to do so. I couldn't overlook how her words stirred emotions in me that I hadn't anticipated. I'm at a loss for words. I finally spoke, my voice trembling slightly. "It's simply intricate. This all took me by surprise." Katie nodded, her expression gentle and understanding. I didn't either, but there are moments when events unfold that leave you feeling a certain way, beyond your control. I want to keep things comfortable between us, James. I simply required a listening ear. I took a deep breath. I understand. I certainly do. It's merely, I'm uncertain about how to approach this situation. A lengthy silence enveloped us, the atmosphere thick with things left unsaid. I felt the need to express something that could improve the situation, to clarify that my intentions were never to cause her pain or create any discomfort with Tom. However, I was uncertain about the way forward. Before I had the chance to respond, Tom returned downstairs, his tone cheerful as he inquired, "What's happening?" Katie swiftly averted her gaze, managing to conjure a smile. "Just a casual conversation, Tom." I rose to my feet, overwhelmed by the oppressive weight of the tension surrounding me. I ought to take my leave. I'll see you all later. As I stepped out of the house, an unsettling sensation lingered, as if everything was spiraling beyond my grasp. I attempted to make the right choice, yet I was completely unaware of the direction this was heading. What began as a straightforward dialogue had now evolved into something far more intricate, and I found myself unable to break free from it. The boundary separating friendship from something deeper had become indistinct, leaving me uncertain about how to resolve it. I was certain this was far from finished. Far from it. The following days passed in a haze. The conversation with Katie echoed in my mind, each moment weighing more than the one before. She mentioned that she preferred not to complicate things, yet I could sense that I had already crossed that line. It had evolved beyond just her and me. The story centered on Tom and the profound impact this would have on everything. After that night, there was silence from Katie. She fell silent, and I assumed she was allowing me the space I had requested. Yet, as time went on, I found it increasingly difficult to dismiss the sense that I was evading an issue that would demand my attention eventually. As I pondered further, the clarity of the situation emerged more distinctly. I wasn't merely evading her presence. I found myself evading my own presence. That following weekend, I caught myself wandering around my apartment, contemplating whether I should make the effort to contact her. The unvoiced tension lingered between us, and the absence of her presence since that night created an atmosphere of unresolved dialogue, suspended in time. I was uncertain whether to express regret, face her directly, or simply allow the situation to unfold, yet one thing was evident, I could no longer sidestep it. I reached out to her that evening, my fingers pausing above the keys for just a moment. At last, I composed a message, "Hey Katie, I've been reflecting on the events of the other night. I hope we can keep things comfortable between us. May we have a conversation?" It seemed like an uncomplicated note, nothing overly significant, yet I understood it would lead to a far more intricate situation. The reply arrived in no time at all. "I believe it would be more beneficial for us to have a conversation. I'm available tomorrow if you'd like to stop by." Uncertainty loomed, yet I understood the necessity of confronting it head-on. I consented to meet the following afternoon, and I made an effort to avoid overanalyzing the situation. I took a shower, slipped into my jeans, and made my way to Tom's house, feeling uncertain about what awaited me beyond that door. Upon my arrival, Tom was not present at home. I was caught off guard by his reaction, yet it felt oddly significant to realize that this would remain solely between Katie and me. The silence enveloped me as I entered the house, the soft sounds of her activity in the kitchen breaking the stillness. She remained facing away as I stepped inside, and for a brief moment, I lingered, uncertain of how to initiate the conversation. Finally, I spoke up, the silence wrapping around us like an uncomfortable shroud. Katie pivoted to confront me, her expression a mystery. "Greetings, I appreciate your presence." A weight hung in the atmosphere that I found impossible to overlook. She appeared neither angry nor distressed, yet there was a certain caution in her demeanor, as if she were shielding herself from an unseen threat. I settled into the kitchen chair, and for a brief moment, silence enveloped us both. "What are you thinking about?" I inquired, attempting to ease the strain in the air. Katie inhaled slowly, avoiding my gaze. I'm uncertain. I believe it's important for us to discuss what transpired, the reasons behind my words, and the dynamics that have unfolded between us since then. I acknowledged her words, sensing their profound impact. Indeed, it's been on my mind as well. It's quite a challenge, Katie. I am a friend of Tom, and you are his mother. This situation is one I never anticipated finding myself in. Katie nodded with deliberation, her fingers drumming anxiously against the table. I understand. I never intended to create any confusion. Lately, I've been experiencing a sense of solitude, James. Tom has been somewhat aloof, and I found myself unsure of whom to confide in. Her voice trembled at the conclusion, revealing that she was suppressing something deep within. It was the first time I had witnessed her in such a fragile state, and it left me with a sense of precariousness, as if I were teetering on the brink of an impending disaster. Listen, Katie, I said, leaning in closer, I really don't want to complicate things for you. I am a friend of your son. That's all I am, and that's how it ought to remain. I wish to avoid causing pain to either you or him. She paused, and I could sense the turmoil reflected in her gaze. I understand, she admitted at last, but my feelings are beyond my control. I wouldn't want to jeopardize your bond with Tom. I truly needed someone to hear me out, and you have consistently been by my side. A swirl of emotions enveloped me, guilt, confusion, and a flicker of anger directed at myself for allowing circumstances to escalate. Yet, the thought of disappointing her weighed heavily on my heart. I aimed to ensure she didn't feel like she was mistaken for contacting me. I'm here to listen, Katie, I said gently, but I need you to realize that this cannot progress any further. It goes beyond our own experiences. It's concerning, Tom, and I can't bring myself to do that to him. At last, she raised her eyes to meet mine, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, her gaze held firm. Comprehend, she murmured softly. I won't request anything further, but I felt it was important to express this and to apologize for making things uncomfortable. I released a breath, sensing a slight lift within me. It's not about your apology. It's about establishing limits for ourselves. We must acknowledge that this situation is challenging, yet we cannot allow it to undermine our relationship with Tom. She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I apologize, James. I never intended to place you in this situation. I'm at a loss for what to do next. The atmosphere surrounding us was charged, yet it carried an undercurrent of relief. We found ourselves in a state of stagnation, neither progressing as we had dreaded nor regressing in any way. An unvoiced agreement lingered between us, a recognition that this moment was inevitable, regardless of the difficulty it brought. It seems we could benefit from a little space, I murmured softly. We both require some distance to reflect on everything that's happened. We can't simply dive back into everything as if nothing has transpired. Katie nodded once more, brushing a tear aside. I concur. I rose, the gravity of the discussion pressing down upon me. I'll head out, but we'll sort this out, all right? Patience is key, it will unfold in due course. She stood beside me, her smile faint and hesitant. Thank you, James, for your understanding. Stepping outside, an unsettling sense lingered, as if the conclusion was still a distant prospect. The tension between us was acknowledged, yet it only gave rise to further inquiries. The circumstances were complex, and I was uncertain about what lay ahead. But one thing was evident, I had transcended the role of merely being Tom's friend. This transcended mere boundaries, it was about maneuvering through a complexity that demanded attention. I found myself pondering just how much time would pass before Tom discovered the truth. The subsequent weeks brimmed with a palpable tension and unvoiced realities. I attempted to set aside the events of the past few days, yet each time I encountered Katie, I was struck by the fragile balance we were navigating. I attempted to calm my thoughts, convincing myself that everything was all right, that we had established boundaries and decided to progress. Yet, I was aware that this predicament wouldn't simply untangle itself without effort. Tom had observed my detachment. He had been inquiring, seeking to grasp the situation at hand. He inquired whether I was steering clear of him, and I responded that I simply required some distance. The issue was that I wasn't steering clear of him. I found myself sidestepping the reality, evading the unavoidable clash that loomed ahead. Deep down, I sensed it was just a matter of time before Tom uncovered the truth about what transpired between Katie and me. It was a serene Saturday afternoon when Tom reached out to me, marking a pivotal moment. His voice had an unusual quality, strained, as if he sensed that something was amiss. "James, we must have a conversation," he stated, his tone grave. "Would you be able to come over?" It centered around Mom. My stomach plummeted in an instant. The time I had been anticipating with unease had at last come. "Sure, I'm heading there now," I replied, making an effort to maintain a calm tone. As I made my way to Tom's house, I steeled myself for the worst possible outcome. Uncertainty loomed over me regarding his knowledge and the extent of Katie's revelations, yet an undeniable sense of impending transformation hung in the air. Upon my arrival, I found Tom patiently waiting for me by the door. He was quick to act. "James, I'm aware of the situation," he said, his gaze steely. "Mom, she revealed it all to me." A chilling wave of apprehension surged through me. "Could you clarify what you mean?" "She informed you." Tom's face reflected a blend of pain and fury. "She shared with me the details of the coffee, the nuances of the conversation, and how everything became entangled. She has been facing a lot, and I understand that, but what I find perplexing is why you didn't share it with me. Why didn't you reach out to me?" My heart raced within me. "I aimed to avoid complicating matters further, Tom. My intention was never to cause you pain." Tom shook his head in disbelief. "I understand you've already done that. I understand that Mom has been facing many challenges, and I appreciate how you've consistently supported her, but I needed to hear it directly from her. I had to learn about it from my mom rather than from you." A lengthy silence stretched between us. I found myself at a loss for words. What can I express? I had let him down as a companion. I found myself in a predicament I should have avoided. "I apologize," I said at last. "I ought to have shared that with you. I ought to have been truthful with you right from the beginning." Tom hesitated, and I could sense the thoughts churning in his mind. He was attempting to make sense of it all. I realized I had caused him pain, yet I was at a loss for how to make it right. The harm had already been inflicted. After what seemed like an endless stretch of time, Tom let out a deep sigh. "I'm uncertain about my ability to forgive you for this, James, yet I refuse to allow it to drive a wedge between us. We've shared too many memories to allow this to come between us." I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding. "I'm committed to going the distance, no matter what it requires. My intention was never to cause you pain." Tom nodded, yet a chill lingered in his gaze. "We'll work through it, but it will require some patience." That day, I departed from Tom's house feeling an immense weight in my chest. The gravity of the discussion loomed above me, heavy and foreboding like an impending tempest. I was uncertain whether our bond could withstand this challenge. Perhaps it would, perhaps it wouldn't, yet I was certain of one thing. Everything had changed forever. In the weeks that followed, I maintained my distance from Tom and Katie. I made an effort to allow them the freedom to process whatever emotions they were experiencing regarding the situation. Tom ceased reaching out, and Katie grew increasingly aloof. I held no resentment towards them. In light of all that transpired, it was clear they required space to reflect, and I had no intention of hastening that journey. One evening, a message from Katie arrived. It was brief and straightforward. "I believe it's time for us to have a conversation. Face to face. Whenever you have a moment, I would love for you to stop by." I felt a mix of uncertainty and anticipation, aware that this was the moment I had been avoiding for so long. I made my way to Tom's house for what I knew would be the final time, contemplating the outcome of our impending conversation. Upon my arrival, I found Katie patiently waiting for me outside. She appeared serene, yet there was an unmistakable spark in her gaze. She exuded a calm resilience now, an unmistakable sense of conclusion that was new to me. "James," she murmured gently. "I've been reflecting deeply on everything, and I understand we can't alter the past. The past is unchangeable, yet we have the power to progress into the future." I nodded, feeling a sense of uncertainty about how to respond. "Apologies for the way things unfolded," she went on. "I never intended to place you in that situation, nor did I wish to cause any pain to Tom. However, I want you to understand that I am finished with all of this. I've had enough of the uncertainty and the remorse. I must prioritize my well-being and that of my loved ones. I must release whatever I've been clinging to." A peculiar wave of relief enveloped me. "I understand, Katie. I certainly do. I apologize. I should have recognized the signs before it escalated to this point." Katie offered a faint smile. "We each erred in our own ways. However, I believe it's time for us to part ways." I nodded, sensing that the burden of the last few weeks had finally been released. As I strolled away from Tom's house that evening, a bittersweet sense of closure washed over me. The bond one shared with Tom would never return to its former state, yet we had confronted the reality together. We had both absorbed difficult truths about limits and transparency, and perhaps that was sufficient for the moment. Things would never return to their previous state, yet life had an uncanny ability to progress regardless of one's readiness, and all I could do was attempt to keep pace with it.